Welcome! Solar flares have returned to the Sun. After a long gap without any significant flares, the Sun produced a whole bunch of flares in the last 2 or 3 days. And this video reviews what went on during that period. Here is a plot of flare activity over the last few months. Light green indicates the number of C flares. The bluish green color indicates the number of M flares, and the black color indicates the number of X flares. You can see there was a period of 21 days from November the 13th until the 3rd of December when we had absolutely no flares at all. And that's the longest time since August of 2020 since we had a break in flare activity as long as that. And we were lucky, we only just caught this outburst. The region developed just as it was going over the west limb, and we caught just the beginnings of the event. We don't know what's going on the backside of the Sun at the moment. We can just see the emergence of this new region in these pictures from the Solar Dynamics Observatory HMI instrument. On the 2nd of December, you can see the remnants of region 2900 going over the west limb. And there's perhaps a hint to the south and east of that of emergence of a new region. You see some bright areas there, that's called plage. But the next day, on the 3rd of December, there's some fairly major spots that have developed in that same area. And that is the beginning of the region development that produced all these flares. Then, to put no finer point on it, all hell breaks loose. You can see we've had a series of flares, C flares and an M flare over the next couple of days. And the onset of it is quite sudden. And this is very typical of solar active regions. As they emerge rapidly, they'll produce a whole bunch of flares and then get more sedate as the time goes by. The region produced 20 C flares and 1 M flare in just that short period. And much of this activity was from behind the limb, so there's probably a lot more flares. And the flares we saw were probably much, much larger than the GOES X-rays tended to demonstrate. Of course, it does prove the adage that the best way to predict a flare is to see a flare, and flares come in bursts. So let's take a look at some movies of this. First, we'll start in the transition region with the SDO AIA helium-2 at 304 channel. Its effective temperature is 50,000 degrees, so this is the transition region, and we're looking at filaments and prominences erupting from the dark areas of the disk. And these generally lead to coronal mass ejections. And we'll take a look at some coronal mass ejections in a minute. Next, we'll move to the low temperature corona, which you can see in the iron 9 line of 171 angstroms. Its effective temperature is about 630,000 degrees Kelvin. We can look for large-scale loops between and within active regions. Next, we'll take a look at the active regions themselves, and to do that, we're going to look at the iron 16 line at 335 angstroms. Temperature here is about 2.5 million degrees Kelvin. And last but not least, we'll take a look at the flares themselves, and that will use the iron 18 line at 94 angstroms. The temperature is about 6.3 million degrees Kelvin, and you're looking for flashes within the active regions. Each one of those flashes is a flare of some sort. Last, we'll take a look at the coronal mass ejections, and for that we have to go to a different spacecraft and a different instrument. This is the SOHO LASCO C2 coronagraph. You're looking for eruptions off of the southwest limb. That's at about 4 o'clock. You'll see there is a lot of eruptions there. So this shows that the region is very active and continues to be active behind the limb. So what conclusions can we draw from all of this? This very energetic region just emerged in the southwest. It produced a string of flares, including an M flare. These flares are probably much larger, as most of the emission was from behind the limb, and we couldn't see it. The region will likely return as a large stable spot region on or about the 18th of December. The question is, will it still be producing flares? We'll have to wait and see. So stay safe, and until next time, goodbye.